everyone, it is Aussies Elect here, back with another video, and we have this video coming out not too long before the next federal election. It's supposed to be in May. It's currently February, so we're about 3 months away. I want to talk about in this video two things, which is the first thing is just an update on how things stand versus when I last recorded the video, which was it was a couple months ago. I can't remember when. And then I will talk about the betting odds for seats and I guess other things as well. Um, so, this is what the parliament looks like at the moment. It hasn't changed. And honestly, if you watched my last video, things haven't really changed terribly. I honestly wouldn't change my prediction from last video. I will go over a small mistake I had in my previous video, which actually kind of wasn't a mistake. I had Labour get an extra seat in WA because I thought that Stirling was a marginal seat that was switching, but that's the seat that was removed, so it wouldn't have been an extra seat in WA. But I will go over the seats once again that I predicted and still think will look like, well, I mean, according to the margins, look like they're going to flip. Which is Reid in New South Wales. I think that's the only New South Wales seat. That will go back to the coalition actually. What's his name? The Palmer guy. I can't remember what his name is. And Hughes. We'll talk a little bit about like these independents. These like small liberal independents. I don't know how well they're going to do. There was some polling out recently which suggested that they have a very good chance, as well as Labour, in some seats like North Sydney and Wentworth, but seat polls are always dicey, especially this far out from the elections, so, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But, you know, they could have an impact in seats like Wentworth, North Sydney, Goldstein in Victoria, Flinders in Victoria, which we'll talk about for some reason, Kooyong in Victoria. So sort of those inner city sort of seats that usually they call them blue ribbon seats, Curtin in WA. Anyway, so New South Wales, Reid is the seat I was going to flip there. In Queensland, it was Longman and Brisbane. In South Australia, it was Boothby. In Western Australia, it was Swan, Pearce, and Hasluck. Swan, Pearce, Hasluck. I didn't do anything in Tasmania. And then in Victoria, it was Chisholm. And then I believe this was my prediction or something like this. So yeah, I mean, Labour still wins, but yeah, not to the degree in any way that people are thinking with that most recent news poll that, you know, Labour are in like a crushing position at the moment. But we all know the polls are going to narrow. We all know all these boomers are going to return back to ScoMo. They just got to love ScoMo. They just look at ScoMo and they're like, you know what, he's doing the best he can, and then they'll vote for him. So it doesn't matter how far ahead Labour is at the moment. It doesn't mean diddly squat, and I'm 100% sure that the polls will narrow by the time of the election. All I'm saying at the moment is based on the polls that we have of particular states, whether it's Newspoll quarterlies or of, you know, throwing in Resolve Strategic in there as well, and I think some other state polls. Just based on that, this is kind of like the results that I would be expecting, something like this. I think also like there's Leichhardt in Queensland, and there's also Dixon in Queensland, but like, you know, I don't know about it like that. Like Peter Dutton no, I don't think they're gonna get rid of him. So it'll look at something like this. With Labour just getting a majority this is my sort of prediction at the moment. I'll talk a little bit about the Senate. Nothing really has changed in the Senate. I still think that at the moment Queensland looks like this, which is going to be a weak performance for the coalition there. South Australia, New South Wales, WA, they're all looking like status quo, standard, boring, normal stuff. the massive lead that Labor had in WA has sort of um, pees it off a little bit. Well, actually, I want to quickly go back to this. So yeah, the reason it didn't actually matter that much that I had this mistake where I gave Labor an extra seat here is because the seat of Tangney, which it's actually got a margin of under 10%, whilst on the post-election pendulum it was over 10% because I hadn't taken in the redistributions that happened since the post-election pendulum was made. So it's actually slightly more marginal. It's got a margin of like 9.8% or something, and like it was like 10% swings, so it actually wasn't that. It actually wasn't really a mistake. It's actually a good thing that I put that Labor would get as many seats as they would um, in WA, but the swing is not as large as it was earlier, and that's why I'm going to confidently give 3 seats to the coalition there and to Labor. So Victoria is still looking like this is likely. Not well, sorry, not I wouldn't say likely, but it could happen. It definitely could happen at the moment. I mean, this once again, this isn't taking in the massive fucking news poll that we just got. Um, I don't know what that says about individual states because we don't have a state report of individual states from that news poll. It's just from like the month of January and stuff like that. Throughout the whole country. So yeah, I don't know, but at the moment, Labor is polling um, about 55 to 45, or even higher in some polls. Um, Two-party preferred in Victoria, and that should be enough for them to get 4 seats out of 6. Um, it's going to be difficult for them to do this. I think it's possible. It's not. It's not. It's achievable for them if the polls stay the way they are until the election, which I don't necessarily think they will. And regardless of how things go, oops, I put that in the wrong place. I still think that that is going to be the case for the Tasmania because Tasmania is the most left wing, and they always it's the one where Labor getting 3 seats is sort of a thing that happens, and Jackie Lambie isn't going to get anywhere. Nick Xenophon still hasn't planned a return. I don't think the UAP are going to get anywhere. I think they've teamed up with the Liberal Democrats. I don't think it's going to really help them. Maybe all it might do is split the Conservative vote in Queensland. To be honest, I think it actually might help Labor. So yeah. So once again, this is a pretty decent Senate for Labor, even if they don't win um, that other seat in Victoria. This is still all right for Labor because they can get stuff through with the Greens and Lambie or One Nation if One Nation are feeling like passing something with Labor on the day. Okay, so let's talk about betting, and this is where things get interesting and possibly the bit where you've been waiting for this whole time. So we're going on to sportsbet.com. So I will tell you the seats that Sportsbet thinks will flip, and they're slightly different to what I think. So it thinks that Chisholm will flip. Actually, I'll go state by state. I'll go state by state because it's probably just easier to do that. So we'll just start off with Northern Territory. These seats are like said to be marginal, Solomon and Lingiari, but at the moment, like they just think they're going to Labor will keep them. I mean, I've seen no evidence why that wouldn't be the reason. So ACT, these are all like pretty safe Labor seats. Apart from Bean is slightly less safe, but yeah, no, that's that's what it is. Tasmania has 2 very interesting seats. So we've got Bass, which this is the first flip that it's calling. It's calling that, and I didn't actually. Once again in my prediction I don't include Bass and Braddon in my predictions because I just think that it's unreliable to try to figure out what Tasmania is doing. I think like there was some like seat polling before the election which actually came to truth, but that was seat polling, and all we have is like some like I don't know if it's like some essential or something, some poll that polls Tasmania and gets a really weird two-party preferred like. So I'm not. Anyway, all I'm trying to say here is I'm not going to try to predict Bass or Braddon, but this does have both Braddon as being a complete tie. So Coalition Labor, I'm not prepared to give it to either of them. So they think that it could go either way between two of the major parties. And so that's one possible pickup for Labour, but that is one pickup in Bass. Then we go SA. The only real marginal seat here is Boothby, and this is predicting a Labour pickup, but it's pretty close. So it's not they're not 100% sure about it or anything. Um, and I'll just quickly look at Sterling because that's like Sturt, sorry. Um, that does have the coalition massively ahead. So that's not really a marginal seat, but it's the most marginal apart from. Um, and then Senate Alliance. No, nobody's expecting a Nick Xenophon comeback, but if he does, then maybe those seats will become interesting. Um, Now we go into WA. Right, WA. So I said that the swing had come down a little bit. So I reckon it's gone from about 10% to about 7 or 8%. And that still means a flip of go down to Swan. This is giving it to Labour. Pierce giving it to Labour. I have them winning Hasluck, but I believe that this does not give it to Labour. Let me have a look. Yes, it stays with the coalition on this. I think this is a seat that could definitely go to Labour, and it's interesting that it's. I think it's actually more marginal than Pierce, but they're just expecting because of all the drama with Christian Porter that's going to push the seat over to Labour winning it, I guess. And there's the Tangney that I was talking about earlier. That's margin of 10%. That's something that could flip, but yeah. So and then there's Curtin where there's like an independent sneaking up, as I was talking about earlier. Yeah, everything else, nothing really to write too much about. So Queensland is the big state that swung massively to the coalition last election. It's not expecting a swing back. Blair is a marginal seat. I think it's like 1.2% or something, and they're expecting that Labor is going to hold it easily. So they're not expecting a swing away from Labor, the betting sites. Brisbane. Now this is a seat that I said I thought could flip, or it's at least within the margin. I believe the margin is something like 4.8%, and it's looking like about a 5.5% swing to Labor at the moment. So Brisbane is it's got coalition. Oh shit! This was $4.50 last time I checked. This is narrowed. Shit. Okay. All right. So yeah, because I was saying to my friend like I can't actually put money on this election at the moment because I'm not in Australia. But I was saying like if I was to put money on anything, it would have been on Brisbane for Labor to win on $4.50, and it's now narrowed to $2.50. So that's one big change that I've seen very recently. So yeah, I was right. I should have put money on it. Flynn. Now this one's interesting. I don't know why, but the betting side is giving it to Labor. I have no idea why. If anyone could tell me why, please post in the comments because I have no idea why Labor is the favourite of this. It's got a margin of like 8%. I don't get it. If we look at Leichhardt, which is sort of, I think it's like a margin of 5%. It's got coalition massively ahead. Well, not massively, but enough ahead that it's not incredibly close. Lilly, this is a seat that on a very small margin. I think it's less than 1% or around 1%. And they think Labor's going to win it. Longman, another seat that they think is going to flip, but it's kind of close. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for Queensland. I'll just check Dixon. Dixon, I believe they think that Peter Dutton's going to hold on to it. He's the main star if ScoMo gets disposed of this election. So yeah, they think the coalition will hang on to that. Right. Now, let's move on to what I believe is the most interesting state of this, which is Victoria. And the reason is because there is, I believe, only one seat that they're expecting to flip, which is Chisholm, which they think is sort of a sure Labor victory. But there's several seats which are surprisingly close. So we have Casey. Now I believe this is the Speaker's seat, and it's got a margin of something like 6%. The Speaker is retiring. This one has the coalition only barely ahead of Labor. I'm not expecting a very large swing in Victoria. I'm only expecting a swing of about 3 or 4%. So I would not expect this seat to go, but the betting sites are saying that this is, a high possibility. Um, and if we go down to Deakin, we see something very similar. Coalition only narrowly ahead in Deakin. Um, Flinders, Coalition versus Independent. This is Greg Hunt's seat. He is retiring, but I don't know who this independent is that is seeking a fight against Greg Hunt's old seat. But they're apparently you can put your money on them on winning it. I think this is a margin of 8% or something like this. So I mean, at least it gets Labour. So, and then there was one more. So there was Goldstein, another sort of independent seat. New seat of Hawke. Higgins, which is only on a margin of 3%, and they're predicting that the coalition are going to hang on to it. But this will be one that the Greens should be targeting. But it's Labour who was ahead of the count last time, so I don't know. I feel like you could put some money on this, and it wouldn't be such a bad bet. And Indi, they reckon it's going to stick with an independent. Kooyong, sort of a scary independent, but Latrobe is the last one. Coalition once again only narrowly ahead there. So the only thing I want to say that's important about New South Wales is that it has the only seat which is sort of looking like dicey for Labor. That like the coalition could take it off them, which is Gilmore, where it only has Labor marginally ahead. This did, I think, a week or two ago have the coalition ahead, actually in the seat. Yeah. That is looking a bit dicey. But yeah, Reid is another seat that the betting markets are predicting are going to go to Labour. They are the favourites, not by a huge margin, but a decent bit. Just want to quickly mention also that Lindsay is very close, as well as Robinson in New South Wales. I don't know how well I don't know what New South Wales thinks about ScoMo. He was known as the Prime Minister of New South Wales for a little bit. But yeah, these are two seats, I guess, the coalition has to be worried about, according to the betting sites at least. Rightio, let's see what the betting sites have predicted for this election. So we've got two seats in Queensland going to Labor. That is Flynn and Longman. In New South Wales, we have the seat of Reid going to Labor. I'm just going to put it's also predicting that the coalition will win back that seat from Hughes Man, whatever his name is. In Victoria, we have Chisholm going to Labor. Everything's staying pretty much the way it is apart from that. In Tasmania, we have these two seats returning to Labor. South Australia, one seat, and in WA, two seats. So, the betting sites are predicting a Labor victory. In fact, they're more certain of a Labor victory than I am, but that's not hugely surprising. What is surprising is that there isn't as much of a expected Labor victory as there should be. I mean, let's go back to the betting sites because I want to show you at the moment what it looks like for who they think are going to win the election outright. So they think that Labor's gotten in the bag. Like, Labor's the easier favourite here. This is easy money. If you think the coalition is going to win, if you think Scott Morrison is going to be re-elected, easy money here. Every dollar you put on, you get $3 back if you reckon he's going to win. So this is a pretty sure bet from the betting agency. This is basically saying, yeah, we think that Labor's going to win. And I'm surprised, given this numbers, that the seats aren't higher, but I guess they've learnt from their mistakes because in the 2019 election there was something like 90 seats which had Labor ahead. Now as I said, there's only 78. So they're being a bit more conservative despite the fact that they do think the Labor will win. But if I was to put money on it at the moment, I'd say a narrow Labor victory is probably what I would say. So let's look at some more stuff. Hung Parliament. There's some easy money if you think there'll be a hung Parliament. Next federal election, that's just going to be May. type of government formed. This is one I find interesting. There's some, if you think that a Labour minority, which I think is definitely possible, a Labour minority is likely, then there's some easy money there. $5. Um, Senate betting. This one is a doozy. The final seat of Queensland. I mean, this comes down to sort of like how the algorithm works, basically. If I was to put money on anything, I'd say probably on Greens as the final seat. I want me to think. If Labor gets 26%, so that means they have 12. Yeah, I think probably Green would be my bet if I was to put money on that. I don't know if I will though. Um, and Lever up. There's really not that interesting. Uh, Leader for opposition. Let's see. Peter Dutton is probably going to be number one. So, yeah, it is. Yeah, Josh Frydenberg. Yep. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it for this video. So I guess my conclusion is today that Labor are looking like they're ahead at the moment, but despite what the most recent news poll says, the betting agencies are not. They're not. They're thinking Labor have got it, but they're not. They're not full throttle. They're not full throttle. Like it's a pretty bad poll for the coalition, but like given what happened in 2019, nobody's and given just ScoMo, his resilience. He's so good at getting voters back after trailing. He's just so good at pulling off miracles. He's so good at like people fucking hating him, and then like a couple months later they all love him. They just look at him and go, he's just an everyday bloke. He's doing the best he can. He has a go. He gives a go. He gets a go. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him to claw back a win from here. That is it for this video. Thank you for watching.